past year, because truly the more we know about scams, the less likely we are to fall for them, the less likely we are to let someone we love fall for the scam that someone may be trying to do. So I am excited to present to you today COVID-19 related scams, and also would like to give you the challenge to share with someone who you care about something that you may learn today about scams. Because truly we are all in this together, and the more we know, the more we can help one another. So today, like I said, we'll be discussing COVID-19 related scams. Also, we want to ensure that the presentation will be available to everyone. And so we do have a live captioning available. If you are not able to hear, just click on this menu option and you can turn on your live captions. And I will be going over many coronavirus related scams today. And as we're all trying to do our best in the pandemic, I just want to say again, thank you to Jackie, who was able to use technology to get us to coordinate virtually this year and reach out to each of you as the pandemic is continuing to impact the United States. And we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. The more that we find there are new items in the news and affecting us and affecting the ways that we live our lives, scammers actually take advantage of that. So we want to make sure that you're aware of the different types of scams that are going on. And then also make sure that you know how these scams are being conducted, and give you some tips and resources so that you know how to avoid scams in the future, and hopefully can share that with others as well. If there ever is an instance where either today during the presentation you find that something happened to you, or you later find that you were scammed, there's no shame in that. We actually want to make sure that you know what the resources are and what you can do if that does happen to you or someone that you care about. And at the end of the presentation, as Jackie mentioned, we will have a Q&A, but you don't have to wait until the end to ask your questions. You can ask your questions anytime in the chat. And also, everything that I'm going to discuss today will be hosted on the website, on the NCPW page. So you don't have to worry about taking notes. If you want to take a screenshot, go for it. Or if you do want to take notes, you can do that. Also, I encourage you to follow us on social media in order to keep up with scams, as things are rapidly changing, both with COVID and with scammers and the ways that they're taking advantage of people. That's one of the first places where we notify folks, as well as our website, where we have frequent press releases about new items as they're coming up. In the meantime, again, I hope you learned something new today and pass it on to others, because together we can get through this and help one another. So I'm speaking today on behalf of the Office of Consumer Protection. Our mission is to foster a fair and safe marketplace for consumers and assure that businesses conduct themselves honestly, ethically, and responsibly under the consumer laws of the state of Hawaii. And that's under the Hawaii Revised Statutes, Chapter 487. The introduction earlier was from our director at the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, where OCP is one division. So OCP is actually composed of 4 sections, and the first is the Consumer Resource Center, and we are so grateful for their help in providing all of the intake. So generally, as a member of the public, the Consumer Resource Center is your first point of contact in order to get the help and the investigation that we provide. So the investigation section receives the cases from the Consumer Resource Center and then gathers all the information to determine if laws have been violated, where then the legal section will have attorneys review any cases and engage in the enforcement of the laws. Another part of the Office of Consumer Protection is the Landlord-Tenant Information Center, and there's also a landlord-tenant hotline for any questions that you may have. And that is staffed Monday through Friday, even through the pandemic. We also coordinate with the federal government so that we're aware of scams that are happening in other states before they may even reach Hawaii, or we're letting them know what's happening here so that in coordination, again, because we're all in it together, we can be sure to stomp out any fraudulent activity before it affects too many people. Lastly, one of the functions of the Office of Consumer Protection is to provide education and awareness about what's happening, and I hope to help you with that today. We do handle a wide variety of complaints, including unfair or deceptive practices and acts by businesses or individuals, as well as privacy and security breaches, which can result in identity theft. And especially right now, one of the areas that we're dealing with is scams. And of course, many happen over the internet and also in areas of financial relief. And scams really can just pop up out of nowhere when we least expect it and where we least want it. But we're here to help you know about these instances before they happen so you can be prepared. And not just to scare you, because we also want you to know that there are reliable resources out there to help you and where you can count on information so that you know what is current information and you won't fall prey to somebody who may be deceptive or lying to you in order to take advantage of you. So there's a lot of reliable COVID information available locally in the state through the Disease Outbreak Control Division. We have a lot of vaccine information available, as well as human services, and the Office of DCCA and Office of Consumer Protection are also here for you. Today, I'll be going over some COVID-specific scams. And so these are scams that generally have to do with the virus specifically and how we are interacting with the virus. But most of the advice is sort of going to go on the general theme of don't answer, as in don't answer the phone if you don't know who it is. Don't share, as in don't share your personal information, and don't share your money, and also don't believe, as in don't believe somebody is who they say they are. Keep an open mind, but ask questions and use the tools that you have at your disposal to make sure that the information that you are receiving is true and correct. So one of the areas of scams since last year has been in the area of testing, where everyone wants to know if it's possible that we've been exposed to or may even have COVID. And it's very important to know that if a call is coming unsolicited to you, that you may want to consider if that person is actually who they say they are. Sometimes the calls that come into us can look like it's an official number. It could look like it's the Department of Health or the CDC or someplace that seems like an official number. But it's possible now with technology that people are spoofing phone numbers, which means that they're taking their phone number and disguising it as an official number in the hopes that you'll answer thinking that they're an official person. So it's okay to be skeptical of that. And no government official is going to be upset if you say that you want to confirm that it's actually the government that you're speaking with. So if you need to hang up with somebody, look up the correct phone number and call them directly, that's a great way for you to make sure that you're contacting the appropriate office that you're trying to get in touch with. Also, a lot of texts and emails include links. And sometimes those links don't go to where we think they're going to. And so it's important to be careful with such links. And one area that's also been happening is with contact tracing scams. So contact tracing scams are where someone may say that you've been exposed to COVID or you've been exposed to someone near you, and that may mean that you could have COVID. So they may want you to click on a link. Again, be careful with that link because it may not actually be going to where you think it's going to. And they may be using it as an opportunity to take money or personal information from you. A legitimate contact tracer from the government will never ask you for your personal information or your account information. They will never ask you for your immigration status. They won't send you links that may be attempts to phish your personal information. So again, be careful with clicking on any strange links, and it's okay to be skeptical. So you don't have to answer the phone if you don't know the number that's calling you. Please don't share any personal information, and you don't have to believe somebody is who they say they are. As time has gone on and the vaccines have been developed, we are now receiving more and more reports of vaccine-related scams. And specifically, people are trying to capitalize on the rollout of vaccines and that there's a scarcity. So anyone who's calling or texting you and asking you to pay for a vaccine is very likely a scammer. If you have Medicare, Medicare fully covers the vaccine. So no one should be paying for the vaccine. If you don't have Medicare, that would be something that you coordinate with your insurance company or with the state to make sure that you are not paying for the vaccine, although there may be some fees associated. But the best resources for that, again, are the official resources. So we want you to contact your insurance company, review those websites linked earlier within our state government that have the information that you need about the vaccine rollout and who is able to receive the vaccines when. As I mentioned, there are folks who you shouldn't believe when they say they are who they are. One example of this in recent years has been that people will pretend to be part of the government. Like a scammer may pretend that they're an IRS agent and say that you owe back taxes. And sometimes they've actually had instances where people have been very forceful in their language and threatening about jail time or fines. And it sort of creates a pressure on a person who's answering a call. And that pressure is something that has been common with a lot of scammers, because when many of us have that pressure, we may be more inclined to just respond to what they're saying rather than to be skeptical of what they're saying, to question their identity, and to be reluctant to give our personal information or our money. So do remember that if anyone says that they're contacting you from the state, local, or federal government, that you can go to the website yourself, find out the correct phone number to contact, or if there's an online method of retrieving and conducting your business, that you can do that. In addition to COVID-specific scams, there are some scammers who have sort of taken the opportunity to take advantage of this moment where we are isolated and many people aren't leaving their homes. And also, people are worried. People are worried about their health. People are worried about their finances. And so folks have been reporting that there are scammers trying to find different and creative ways to contact people in order to take personal information and money. Again, those same 3 tips follow. Don't answer if you don't know the person. You do not need to share your personal information or payment. And it's okay to be skeptical. You don't have to believe somebody is who they say they are. And don't worry about hurting somebody's feelings if they say that they need your funding, because they're not going to be worried about hurting your feelings if they're trying to take your money. So there are many products and services that people have come out with that are actually not real, like air filter systems to prevent COVID and clean the air inside your home so that you can't get sick, or fake cleaners and disinfectant products. One of the most common robocalls that people have receiving in the last few years are robocalls about auto warranties. And they've even shifted the language in those calls about auto warranties now to reference these unprecedented times or these uncertain times. And that's because they're taking advantage of the worries that we all already have because of COVID-19. Another area where we want to make sure people are aware you can report to the Office of Consumer Protection is price gouging. And that's when a seller locally or online may try to take unfair advantage of the scarcity of a product. So a year ago, it may have been toilet paper or PPE. But if this happens to you, if you go to a store and you find that a price for an item that you usually get is actually inflated because of demand, you can contact the Consumer Resource Center, and the Office of Consumer Protection does investigate thoroughly those practices and does prosecute price gouging. Another thing that's happening as we're isolated and there are folks who aren't leaving home is that we have people who may need help to get their groceries or with things that they need to get done around their house. And with that, we need to be mindful that there are some people out there who are offering to get your groceries for you and bring them to you, but actually may take your money and then you may never see them again. So if you do need help around the house, there are services that are reputable, there are reliable businesses, and we also have a website that we can link to the NCPW site later for elder care services, and that way people have reputable resources that you can reach rather than the unreliable or uncertain possibility that someone may be trying to scam you and take your money. On the flip side of that, if you are able to help and you do know someone who might need help, maybe it's a good time to offer that. Maybe it's a good time to ask the kupuna in your life if they may need some help with groceries or errands that they need to get done around town. If you're able to, this is a good time for us to help one another. So, speaking of help, sometimes folks offer help and we actually can't count on them, like scammers that pose as tech support agents. Sometimes this scam is actually often targeting folks who are senior citizens or may not be familiar with computers. And this in the past has tended to be one of the most successful scams where people pretend like they are helping someone with their computer or helping to get rid of viruses and then gain access to someone's computer only to actually steal the personal information that is stored on that computer. So please be careful with how you access and grant access to people to your computer, also to your phone, because there's so much information that we have on our smartphones now. They're really like a computer that we have in our hands. And we need to be careful with folks who may take advantage of that. Another area where folks take advantage is actually of the generosity that we have and of our natural desire to help one another. So sometimes we have instances where scammers impersonate actual charities so that people think they're donating to a charity, but the actual donation may be going to a person who is siphoning that money, either by sometimes creating a website that's just one letter off and you might not quite catch it at first if you're not careful. In other instances, people are creating fake charities. So one thing you can do is actually look up and make sure that the charity that you're donating to is an actual legitimate charity. And we have a website for that locally with the Attorney General's office. And also there are websites available nationally to ensure that your funding is going where you think it's or where you want it to go. Again, if someone contacts you unsolicited, that may be a red flag. So generally, if you contact someone, think of that as a more reliable way to ensure that your money is going where you want it to go. Unfortunately, people are taking advantage of this moment where so many of us may not even be able to donate to charities because we're going through financial hardship. With unemployment on the rise and debt at all-time highs, we have many scams related to debt relief where folks may be trying to help people to settle their debts, but actually might be participating in taking advantage of people by stealing personal identifying information like social security numbers. So you want to make sure that if you are trying to work to settle your debt, that you contact legitimate credit counselors. You can also contact your creditors directly rather than through a third party, because especially at this time, many creditors are willing to work with people if you are affected by the pandemic. But if you do have a debtor who is contacting you and trying to get you to pay back your debt, there is a Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which is in place so that people are not getting harassed about the debts that they owe. Another thing to watch out for is that people are trying to create opportunities for folks to make more income. And that may be in the form of fake work from home opportunities. Often these are received as robocalls, and people need to be aware and be just a little bit suspicious of the offers that are coming to you. If something seems too good to be true, be sure that you look into it, especially before sharing any personal information, including your social security number. Another way that people are trying to get folks excited is about prizes and sweepstakes. If you didn't enroll in a sweepstake or a opportunity to win a prize, and someone says that you've won a prize, that's a red flag. So be wary of that if anyone contacts you. For instance, this is a screenshot of an actual text I received that I won a Garmin watch. And at first glance, it could seem exciting because it says that it's from Amazon. And I know Amazon is a reputable company, or most people think it's a reputable company, so maybe it's real. And they actually made it look pretty real because I didn't come in first place. I actually came in third place. So maybe I can win a watch, but the likelihood is that this is a scam. And one way that I can tell that is because it's asking me to click on a link. And that's a huge red flag for me. So I didn't click on the link. I don't know what it goes to, and I don't want to find out. So I want to be curious about if I can trust someone, but I don't want to be curious about what happens if I do. Um, in addition to individuals, small businesses have also been targeted, and some of those scams have related to virus funding um, and loans that they're giving out to small businesses. If it's an official government entity that's giving a loan, try to contact them yourself rather than giving any personal information or information about your business over the phone or online or via any link that someone else has provided. Again, don't answer if you don't know who's contacting you. Don't share your personal information. Don't share your money. And don't believe somebody is who they say they are. On that note, there are many financial relief scams. And a lot of people are preying on the fact that we're worried about our finances at this time. But again, we're not here just to tell you about the scary things that are happening. We also want you to know that there are reliable resources for you about student loans, about mortgage relief, about foreclosure forbearance, about foreclosure moratoria. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau offers information. We also offer resources and information to you with the Office of Consumer Protection. We want you to know whether you are a landlord or a tenant, a homeowner, or a renter, that there are resources that are available for you and that are legitimate resources. That's where we want you to go. And we want you to seek out those resources rather than believing someone when they say they have a resource for you. On that note, a lot of what I'm talking about today is scams, but we have an instance where we had several reports of a possible scam that people received in the mail, and it actually wasn't a scam. So As we have economic impact payments that were received and potentially may be received in the future in the form of stimulus checks, some people received their economic impact payments in the form of prepaid debit cards. If you get a prepaid debit card in the mail that looks like this, it's actually real. And this is actually an image from a post that we created for Facebook. So again, I encourage you to follow us on social media, because that's one place where we're going to be sharing regularly as things are coming up, so that you can keep up with scams as they're happening, and you can also be aware of what's not a scam in this case. This next section of COVID-connected scams is actually a really difficult one, because this set of scams actually has to do with when scammers take advantage of the love that we have for others. Again, the isolation that we're facing because of social distancing and with many people staying in their homes has resulted in people seeking out care and loving relationships. And that can be in the form of pets, it can be in the form of romance, it can be in the form of familial relationships. And so we want to make sure that you're aware that there also are areas, these are areas where you can be wise to what is happening and the ways that people are trying to take advantage of our natural, very human desire for connection. So for folks who are seeking pets as companions, we encourage you to seek out pets from reputable animal shelters, or look up any seller or company that says that they are selling a pet, because we've had reports that people purchased pets online and it turned out that they were images that a person found online of the most adorable pet that anyone could love. And after sending the funds, people never got to meet the pet of their dreams. And so this is an area where we want to make sure that if you are seeking a pet, this is an important instance to be aware of how you pay for things. Make sure that you pay for things in ways that you can account for. Very often, these scammers ask people to pay with gift cards. Do not pay for a pet with a gift card. Also, don't wire money. A reputable business will ask you to pay for things in ways that can be traced. The next area of scams involving loved ones actually has to do with what we're calling romance scams. And unfortunately, there are instances where people may meet someone online and find out very quickly that a relationship builds and develops often much faster than may happen naturally. And it's because the person is actually a scammer. So the sort of typical way that this has happened is that someone claims that they fall in love quickly and then somehow or for some reason needs a sum of money, and then once they receive the funding, they're nowhere to be found. And you might think that you're not out there looking for romance, so this can't happen to you. But this is not something that's isolated to dating apps. There are instances where this has happened to people from friend requests on Facebook. There are instances where someone has tried to send direct messages to somebody on Instagram. So really be careful about who you allow to slide into your DMs and to friend request you, and how you become friends with people, and maybe consider that there's a chance that someone may not be who they say they are. It's also not just young people. Many scammers are targeting older people with this scam. And again, these are sophisticated scammers. This is not something to be ashamed of if it has happened to you. If it has, you can contact the Consumer Resource Center and we can help to investigate this scam. But also think about if you have anyone that you care about who may be building different relationships, and if there's a chance that maybe they could slow things down and be aware that this is a scam that has been going on. Another scam that has to do with loved ones is often called the grandparent scam. And it's a little bit of a misnomer because this does not just happen to grandparents. It happened to my cousin with his son. It happened to a friend of mine with her parents. And the grandparent scam is one where a family member may be in trouble. And so the scammer would contact someone and ask for money to be wired or funds to be transferred in some way to help the person who may be in trouble. Turns out it's not the actual person. And to be sure that it stays private, they often ask the victim not to tell anyone. But once they take that money, again, they're nowhere to be found. So be careful of this and let people know that this is happening. Because if I were to receive a call from someone saying that anyone I love is in trouble in this moment right now, and I need money, and I feel the pressure that they need that right now, I would give anything to save someone I love. But if I know that this is a scam that's happening, before I get that call, or if I get that call, I'm more likely to be skeptical. And one of the best things I can do is call that person directly. Hang up on the scammer and call that person directly, because I don't need to believe that they are who they say they are. I don't need to give them money. Often, again, the way that scammers try to get people to pay them is through money that is not traceable and that cannot be recovered. So wiring money, sending gift cards, and now also using mobile payment apps like Venmo, Cash App, Zelle. So be careful with these ways that people get folks to pay. If somebody's calling you with an opportunity or a situation that you need to pay, it's a red flag. So one of the ways that people contact folks and use phones is robocalls. And by now, many of us have likely had robocalls or an actual person that asks, "Are you there?" And the moment that you say yes, that can be recorded and used to take advantage of you, because they now have a recording of you saying yes, and they could potentially use it for something else. Another thing that robocalls have been doing is asking folks, if you don't want to receive any more robocalls, just press 1. And I have to say that I fell for that the first time I heard it. I usually don't answer, and this is my work, and I have my phone company set up so that it notifies me when there's a scam, but it doesn't mean that's always going to happen. And what actually happens when you press 1 is that they know that they've reached a phone number where there's a live person who answers and listens, and it may mean that they contact you more. So be cautious. Another thing to be cautious with is spoofing. I mentioned this one earlier where folks can use a fake caller ID. And so people are using technology now to pretend like they're your neighbor. So if you get a phone call that has the same area code and the first 3 numbers of your phone number, that's called neighbor spoofing. Another way that people do it is with government spoofing. So if they pretend like they're contacting you from a government office, it could be that they're just disguising their own number to make it seem like they're official. Again, if it happens to you, don't say yes or no. Don't share any personal information. If they say they're from the government, contact the government entity by looking them up online, check the number, and you can call them yourself. In both of these cases, the best thing to do is don't answer. If you do answer, it's okay to hang up. As I mentioned, you can contact your phone carrier to get scam alerts. I mentioned that I have that on my phone. So when I do have a call from a number that has been used for robocalls and spoofing, my phone will say likely scam or telemarketer. There's also a national do not call list you can get on there. And again, be careful with what you say and what you press when you receive a robocall or a spoofing call or a call that might seem like a scam. I mentioned earlier that there are also many text scams, and this is an area where it's important not to click on any links. But one thing to keep in mind is that they can, again, spoof that number. So it might look like it's your friend who's texting you. So in the case of my text, it looked like Amazon, but it could look like I'm texting you and sending you a link about something, but it could be a case where they've been hacked. So if that happens to you and a friend sends you a link that you might be suspicious about, just call them and check if they might be hacked and if they actually were the one who sent you the link. There are many scams that are also conducted by a computer via social media and emails that pretend to be from someone that they're not from. There are phishing scams where people try to retrieve your personal data from your computer. These are things to be important about because they can lead to malware, which can do bad things on your computer and steal your personal information that you have saved on your computer, or ransomware where someone can hold your computer or your phone ransom. As we're on our computers more and we're using video conferencing scams, we're using video conferencing, hopefully not scams. Scammers have actually found ways to take advantage of the video conferencing that we're doing more and more these days. That includes that they are interrupting calls and they're also sharing files that contain spyware or malware. So if you are going to have video conference calls in your workplace or with your friends and family, make sure you password protect them. Sometimes they have generated random numbers for your meeting calls. That's a good way to go so that someone can't just hack your video call. Also, you can set your video calls so that you need to log in, and that gives you a chance to screen participants and also lock your room so that no one else can enter after you are in your room. One thing you may want to also consider is turning off the ability for other people to share files or to share their screens. And all of the video conferencing software is aware of these scams, so be sure to keep your software up to date as they're often doing what they can to prevent this type of scam. As you go forward today and in the future, I hope that you will be able to avoid the scams that I mentioned. Keep in mind again that you don't have to respond to calls or texts, and you don't have to believe what people say. We want to make sure that you have the information so that you are not scammed. But if you are, again, we're here for you. The first thing we want you to do is stop interacting with the scammer, especially in the case of, say, a romance scam. Contact your bank and credit card company. And one of the most important things you can do is report any scam that happens to you or where you are approached with a scam. If you are exposed, we encourage you to check your credit report and also check any of your accounts that you have, as that's one way that people may try to take advantage of your personal information. And yesterday we had a great presentation regarding identity theft. And so the efforts that you can make to protect your personal information can help to prevent identity theft. One thing that the credit reporting bureaus are doing right now is that they're actually offering weekly free credit reports. During this time, at least through April of this year, you can get one free credit report from each of the agencies every week. This is a great way for you to monitor and take charge of your own accounts and ensure that no new accounts are being opened in your name, and also that what's happening in your current accounts, especially if you're going through any debt relief, is correct and accurate. If you need to, credit freezes are a possibility for you, or there are also fraud alerts where you can essentially ask the credit reporting agencies to contact you before any new accounts are opened. This is something people do even before there's ever been a fraud on their account. And it's a wise way to make sure that someone can't just open an account on your name. So do consider that. And it's actually really easy to do. You don't even need to contact all three of the credit reporting bureaus. You just need to contact one and they will notify the other two. So again, this information will be available on the NCPW website. And if you are exposed to anything, we encourage you again to please report and share with us so that we can help you to fight fraud and prevent others from being exposed to scams and fraud. We have the number for the Office of Consumer Protection. Again, the Consumer Resource Center is so great with being the first point of contact for anyone who has possibly been exposed to any fraudulent or deceptive activity. You can also contact your local police department. And also there are federal offices that you can contact if there's any instance of a deceptive practice or fraud or scam. That's all the information that I have for now. Again, I encourage you to keep up with us by staying in contact through social media with us, where we often update about any new things that are happening. But I would like to open now to any questions that folks may have. Did we have any questions over the last hour, Jackie?
We don't have any right now in the chat. I guess we'll give everybody some time to put their questions in. I had a question for you. You had mentioned the Do Not Call registry. I know that's been in existence for quite a while, and it's supposed to stop telemarketing calls. But there have been some people that said that they did sign up for the Do Not Call registry, but they're still getting telemarketing calls. Could you explain that a little and why they're still getting calls?
Right. Unfortunately, that does happen. It happens to me. I'm on the Do Not Call registry, and I have a spam blocker through my cell phone carrier. But one thing to keep in mind is that we're not dealing with someone who's just at home randomly calling your number. These are very sophisticated scammers that we are dealing with, who often have access to technology. And some people flaunt the fact that they may be able to contact you. And it's sort of a situation where the government and that do not call registry is keeping up with folks who report items. So again, this is where that importance of reporting when something does happen to you comes into play. So when my phone tells me that I'm receiving a call from a scammer, it's because someone else has reported that as a scam.
Okay.
So we can all help each other with that.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. We do have a question that
Sure.
just came in. The question is, for the weekly online credit reports from Annual Credit Report, how long does it take for you to receive the report after you submit the request? Is it just a few days or is it weeks?
So I actually received the report right away. It comes to me via email. So there are multiple ways where you can do it. Generally, people will go to that website, and the website still says annualcreditreport.com. Make sure you don't go to freecreditreport.com. That's actually a company. But the government entity that does the credit reports for you is actually called Annual Credit, or the website is annualcreditreport.com. You can go there to access any of your free credit reports, and it's created automatically, and you get a copy of it emailed to you, or you can download it from their site. So it's almost immediate.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't see any other questions. Oh, let's see. Are there specific video conferencing apps that are more susceptible to scams?
I don't know of any particular apps, and we don't actually promote any one product or vendor. But I can say that many of the larger companies that are doing these are trying to take those precautions. And we can also do things where we're not just leaving it up to a company to look out for us, but that's one of the reasons that it's so important to know about what these scams are and what can happen, so that we can take the precautions ourselves to make sure that we are initiating those steps that we need people to go through, like having the right password for our video conference, or not allowing everyone to share their screen. So there's a lot that other folks are doing, but there's a lot that we can also do for ourselves. And that's one thing that we want to help each of you with, because you are a wise consumer, you are able to have the information and the tools to prevent this. And also, again, that challenge that I said earlier, to share this information with others.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Sheila. I hope everybody had all of their questions answered. Please join us tomorrow. We'll have volunteers from the State Health Insurance Assistance Program talking about Medicare and You. And on Friday, we'll have an inspector from the U.S. Postal Inspection Service talking about mail fraud. So thank you guys for joining us today. And thank you, Sheila, for a great presentation.
Thank you.